Guy runs late for interview after helping stranger. But she was the boss's daughter. Jason Miller was rushing through the streets of downtown New York City with his heart pounding. He had exactly 15 minutes left until the interview that could change his life forever, and he was still 3 blocks away from the company. His dress shoes slipped on the wet asphalt on that rainy April morning, and sweat mixed with the drops that insisted on falling. That's when he heard a soft cry coming from the sidewalk. A little girl with blonde hair, no more than 8 years old, was crouched beside a white bicycle with pink details. She wore a beige coat and carried a blue school backpack, and her tears fell over the broken handlebars of the bicycle. Jason stopped. His whole body screamed at him to keep running, but something stronger made him approach the child. "What happened, little one?" he asked, kneeling beside her. The girl looked up with eyes red from crying. "My bicycle broke, mister. I need to get to school before 9 or I'll miss my math test, and if I miss that test, I'll have to repeat the year." Jason looked at his watch. 9:05 in the morning. His interview was at 9:15. If he stopped to help, he would be late. If he didn't stop, a child would fail the school year. "What's your name?" he asked, taking off the black cap he was wearing and running his hand through his messy brown hair. "Emily Johnson," she replied, wiping her nose with her coat sleeve. "And you?" "Jason. Let's see what we can do with this bicycle." He examined the problem. The chain had come off and the handlebars were loose. Nothing he couldn't fix with his own hands, but it would take time. Time he didn't have. His phone rang. The name Johnson & Partners Construction appeared on the screen. It was the company where he was supposed to have the interview. "Hello," he answered without stopping work on the bicycle. "Mr. Jason? This is Sarah from reception. Are you on your way? The interview will start in a few minutes." Jason looked at Emily, who was watching him with hope in her eyes. "Yes, I'm dealing with an emergency, but I'll be there soon." "You know this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, right? The director is specifically waiting for you." "I know. Thank you very much." He hung up the phone and turned his attention back to the bicycle. The chain was more complicated than he had imagined. His hands got dirty with grease and he noticed his white dress shirt was getting stained. "You're getting dirty because of me," said Emily, worried. "Maybe it's better to leave it like this. I'll just walk." "No way," replied Jason, determined. "You said you live far from here, didn't you? Walking, it will take you more than an hour to get there, and it's starting to rain harder." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. Indeed, the raindrops began to fall more intensely. Jason took off his jacket and put it over Emily's shoulders to protect her. "Thank you, Mr. Jason," she said, smiling for the first time. "You're very kind." As he worked, Jason thought about his own story. Son of a cleaning lady and a construction worker, he had studied civil engineering at night while working days at a building supply store. It took him 7 years to graduate, but he made it. His mother, Mrs. Margaret, always said that kindness was the greatest treasure a person could have. "Done!" he exclaimed after 15 minutes of intense work. "Try it now." Emily got on the bicycle and pedaled a few meters. The bicycle worked perfectly. "You did it!" she shouted, happy. "Thank you so much, Mr. Jason." Jason smiled, but when he looked at his watch, his smile disappeared. 9:30 in the morning. He was 15 minutes late for the most important interview of his life. "Now hurry up and go to school, okay? And be careful in traffic." "Aren't you coming with me?" asked Emily. "My school is in the same direction you were running." Jason hesitated. If he went with her, he would be even later. But something in the girl's voice touched him. "All right. Let's go together, but we have to be quick." They made their way down Broadway. Emily pedaled alongside Jason, who walked briskly. Even though he was late, he couldn't help but worry about the girl's safety. "Mr. Jason," said Emily as she pedaled, "can I ask you a question?" "Of course." "Why did you help me?" "You don't know me." Jason thought for a moment. "My mother always taught me that we should help others when they need it. It doesn't matter if we know them or not." "Your mother must be a very good person." "Yes, she is. She works cleaning offices at night to help me pay for college. She always said I would be an engineer one day." And are you an engineer? I am. I graduated last year, but I haven't gotten a job in the field yet. I work at a construction supply store, but today, he stopped talking. Today what? Today I had a very important interview, a chance to work at a major construction company. Emily stopped pedaling. And you missed the interview because of me. Jason saw the despair on the girl's face and knelt in front of her. Listen here, Emily. I didn't miss anything. I made a choice, and it was the right choice. Some things are more important than work. But, no buts. You needed help, and I helped. That's how things should be. They arrived at the private school where Emily studied. It was a beautiful building with well-kept gardens. Jason realized the girl came from a family with good financial means. Thank you for everything, Mr. Jason, said Emily, getting off her bike. How can I repay you? You don't need to repay me anything. Just be a good student and help other people when they need it, okay? I promise. She smiled and ran into the school. Jason stood still for a moment, watching the girl disappear through the school gates. Then he looked at his grease-stained clothes, his hair messy from the rain, and sighed. The interview was lost. 3 years looking for an opportunity like that, and he had thrown it away. But when he remembered Emily's smile, he didn't regret it. He decided to go to the construction company anyway. Maybe he could explain what happened and get another chance, or at least leave a good impression for future opportunities. The headquarters of Johnson & Partners Construction was in an imposing building on Fifth Avenue. Jason had never been in such an elegant place. The lobby was all marble with exotic plants and an impeccably dressed receptionist. Excuse me, said Jason, approaching the counter. I'm Jason Miller. I had an interview scheduled for 9:15. The receptionist, a woman of about 40 named Sarah, looked him up and down. His dirty and disheveled clothes contrasted with the luxurious surroundings. Mr. Jason, you're an hour late. Mr. Johnson has already left for another meeting. I know I'm late, and I apologize. There was an emergency on the way. Would it be possible to reschedule? Sarah hesitated. She had liked Jason during their phone conversations. He seemed genuine, unlike the other candidates. Look, I can't promise anything, but I'll talk to Mr. Johnson when he returns. Leave your updated information. Thank you very much. I would really like to have a chance to show my work. Jason left the construction company with a heavy heart. He walked to the nearest bus stop, thinking about how he would explain to his mother that he had missed the chance of a lifetime. That night, in the small house where he lived with Mrs. Margaret in the Greenwich Village neighborhood, Jason told what had happened. His mother, a 62-year-old woman with graying hair and hands calloused from work, listened to everything in silence. And do you regret it, son? She asked at the end. No, Mum. I would do the same thing again. Mrs. Margaret smiled and hugged her son. Then you did the right thing. Job opportunities come along, son. But opportunities to be a good person, those come every day, and you can't waste any of them. But, Mum, I spent 3 years looking for a chance like that, and others will come. You're a good engineer, but more important than that, you're a good man, and that counts more than any diploma. Jason slept that night with a mix of sadness and peace. Sadness for having lost the opportunity, peace for having done what he thought was right. The next morning, he was getting ready to go to work at the store when his cell phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hello, Mr. Jason? This is Sarah from Johnson & Partners Construction. Jason's heart raced. Good morning, Sarah. Mr. Johnson would like to see you today at 2 in the afternoon. Can you come? Jason could hardly believe it. Of course, I'll be there. Thank you so much. See you later, Mr. Jason. Jason called his boss at the store, asked for a few hours off, and spent the morning getting ready. He took a long shower, put on his best clothes, the only clean dress shirt he had, and even put gel in his hair. At 2 o'clock sharp, he was once again in the construction company's lobby. Sarah greeted him with a smile. Mr. Johnson is waiting. 15th floor, room 1501. Jason went up in the elevator with his heart pounding. When the doors opened, he found himself facing an elegant hallway with pictures of famous works on the walls. He found room 1501 and knocked on the door. Come in, said a male voice from the other side. Jason opened the door and found himself in a spacious modern office. Behind a mahogany desk was a man of about 50, with greying hair, an impeccable suit, and a serious expression on his face. It was Robert Johnson, the owner of the construction company. "Mr. Jason Miller, I presume?" "Yes, sir. Very pleased to meet you, Mr. Johnson. Please sit down." Jason sat in a leather armchair in front of the desk. Robert watched him for a few seconds before speaking. "You were late yesterday?" "Yes, sir, and I sincerely apologize. There was an emergency on the way." "What kind of emergency?" Jason took a deep breath. He decided to tell the truth. A child needed help. Her bicycle had broken and she needed to get to school to take an important test. I stopped to help her and ended up being late. Robert raised an eyebrow. "You missed a job interview to help a stranger's child?" "Yes, sir." "And you don't regret it?" "No, sir. I would do the same thing again." Robert leaned back in his chair, studying Jason carefully. "Tell me more about yourself, Jason." For the next 40 minutes, Jason talked about his education, his experience, his projects in college. Robert asked technical questions, which Jason answered with knowledge and confidence. "Your grades are excellent," said Robert, flipping through the resume. "And you have impressive recommendation letters from your professors." "Thank you, sir. But tell me one thing. Why do you want to work here?" Jason thought carefully before answering. "Because Johnson & Partners Construction doesn't just build buildings, sir. You build communities. I research the company's social projects, the affordable housing, the community centers. I want to be part of something that really makes a difference in people's lives." Robert nodded. "And what is your professional dream?" "My dream is to design affordable homes for low-income families. Dignified, beautiful, functional homes. I've experienced firsthand how difficult it is to have a proper home when you have little money. I want to use my knowledge to change that." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. This helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. For a moment, Robert's serious expression softened. He opened a desk drawer and took out a folder. "Jason, I'll be direct with you. This position is to lead a new company project. We're going to build a low-income housing development in the eastern parts of New York City. 300 homes for families living in poor conditions. It's a challenging project with tight deadlines and a limited budget." Jason's eyes lit up. "It would be a dream to work on a project like that, sir. The starting salary is $12,000, with possible raises based on performance. You'd have a team of 5 junior engineers and complete autonomy to develop the house plans." Jason could hardly believe what he was hearing. It was much more than he expected. I accept, Mr. Johnson. Thank you very much for the opportunity." Robert smiled for the first time during the interview. "Great, you can start on Monday." They stood up and shook hands. Jason was already heading for the door when Robert spoke again. Jason, one last thing." "Yes, sir?" "The child you helped yesterday, what was her name?" Jason found the question odd but answered. "Emily. Emily Johnson." Robert smiled more broadly. "My daughter came home yesterday talking about a very kind mister who fixed her bicycle. She said you lost something important while helping her." Jason felt the world spin. Emily was Robert Johnson's daughter. "Mr. Johnson, You what?" "You did exactly what I hoped you would do." "Jason, I had already decided to hire you based on your resume and recommendations. But yesterday when Emily told me what happened, I knew I had found the right person." Jason was in shock. "You're saying that—" "I'm saying you passed the most important test of all. Technical competence I can teach. Character. You either have it or you don't. And you have it." Robert walked to the window overlooking Fifth Avenue. "Jason, do you want to know why I'm investing so much in this housing project?" "Yes, sir." "Because I also came from a humble family. My father was a house painter, my mother a seamstress. I know what it's like to dream of owning a home and thinking you'll never manage it. When I built this company, I promised that one day I would help families like mine achieve that dream." He turned to Jason. "But I needed someone who understood that reality, someone who wouldn't just build houses but homes, someone who genuinely cared about people." "And how did you know I had that profile?" Robert smiled. Because anyone who stops their life to help an unknown child, even while losing an important opportunity, is someone who cares about people above all else. Jason felt his eyes fill with tears. "May I ask a question, Mr. Johnson?" "Of course." "Why was Emily riding her bike to school? I imagine you have a car and a driver." Robert sighed. "Because I want my daughter to grow up knowing that not everything in life comes easy. She rides her bike twice a week, walks another 2 days, and we only use the car when it's raining heavily. I want her to understand the value of simple things." "I understand." "And yesterday was a gift from fate. Emily learned that there are good people in the world, and I found the engineer I was looking for." They talked for a few more minutes about project details. When Jason finally left the construction company, his legs were shaking with emotion. He had gotten his dream job, and all because he had done the right thing. That evening he told Mrs. Margaret everything. His mother cried with emotion upon learning that her son would finally work as an engineer. "You see, son, when we do good, good comes back to us." "Yes, Mom, you were always right. And now? What will you do first at your new job?" Jason thought for a moment. "I'll design the most beautiful house I've ever made in my life, and I'll imagine it's for a family like ours." On Monday, Jason arrived early at the construction company. Sarah greeted him with a warm smile and accompanied him to his new office. It was a spacious room with a large desk, a state-of-the-art computer, and a beautiful view of the city. His team was waiting, 5 newly graduated engineers, eager to work on the project. Jason introduced himself and began explaining the proposal. "Folks, we're going to build much more than houses. We're going to build dignity. Every family that lives in these homes will be proud of their home, and we are responsible for that." The first few months were intense. Jason worked 12 hours a day, perfecting every detail of the blueprints. He visited several families living in precarious conditions, interviewed children about their dreams, and spoke with the elderly about their needs. Each house would be unique, adapted to the specific needs of the families. Some would have ramps for wheelchairs, others would have larger spaces for big families. All would have small gardens where children could play. During this period, Jason kept in touch with Emily. Robert had given permission for them to correspond by email. The girl sent drawings of the houses she imagined, and Jason incorporated some of her creative ideas into the designs. One day, Emily wrote an email that deeply touched Jason. "Mr. Jason, Daddy told me you're building houses for families who don't have a proper place to live. I'm so proud of you. My teacher said that people like you are real heroes. Thank you for fixing my bike that day. Without you, I would never have met a real hero." Jason printed the email and put it on his office wall. 6 months after the project began, the foundations of the first houses started to be dug. Jason visited the construction site every day, following each stage of the build. It was during one of these visits that he met Dorothy Wilson, a 68-year-old lady who would be one of the first residents. She had raised 5 children alone in a slum, working as a washerwoman. Now, finally, she would have her own house. "Dr. Jason," she said with tears in her eyes, "I never thought I'd live to see this day. A house all my own, with a deed and everything. You deserve this and much more, Mrs. Dorothy. You raised 5 children working hard. This house is a recognition of all your struggle. Can you do me a favor?" "Of course, Mrs. Dorothy." "When the house is ready, will you come have coffee with me? I want you to be the first visitor. It will be an honor." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. A year later, the project was almost complete. Of the 300 houses, 250 were already finished and occupied. The housing development had become a real community, with a school, a health clinic, and even a small square with a playground. Jason was in his office finalizing the last details of the remaining houses when Sarah appeared at the door. "Jason, Mr. Johnson wants to see you. It's urgent." Jason went up to Robert's office with a heavy heart. Was there some problem with the project? "Sit down, Jason," said Robert, but this time there was a smile on his face. "Did something happen, Mr. Johnson?" "Yes, something did. I got a call from City Hall this morning. Jason swallowed hard. And what did they say? They said our project has become a model for the whole country. The mayor wants you to present the project to a federal committee next week. Jason couldn't believe it. Present to a federal committee? That's right. The federal government wants to implement your affordable housing model across the United States. You might be about to change the lives of millions of families. Mr. Johnson, I don't know what to say. Say you accept, because I already confirmed your participation. Robert stood up and walked to a wall with several photos of the housing complex. Jason, 2 years ago you were a construction materials salesman with a dream. Today, you're the engineer in charge of a project that could revolutionize affordable housing in the United States. And it all started because you stopped to help a child. It was the best decision I ever made in my life. And you know why? Because when we act from the heart, the universe conspires in our favor. The following week, Jason was in Washington, D.C., presenting his project to a committee of representatives, senators, and federal government technicians. He showed the blueprints, explained the methodology, talked about the cost-benefit, but most importantly, he told the stories of the families who now had a decent home. At the end of the presentation, the Secretary of Housing approached him. Engineer Jason, I want to congratulate you on your exceptional work. The federal government will invest $500 million to implement your model in 50 American cities. Jason could barely process the information. $500 million, Mr. Secretary. That means you'll be designing housing for about 50,000 families over the next 3 years. Are you ready for this challenge? Yes, I am, Mr. Secretary. This is what I was born to do. When Jason returned to New York City, the news had already spread. Local newspapers wanted to interview him. Specialized magazines wanted to publish articles about his work. But none of that mattered as much as the call he received from Mrs. Dorothy. Dr. Jason, I saw it on television. You're going to build houses for the whole United States. I'm so proud. Thank you, Mrs. Dorothy, but none of this would have happened without people like you who inspired me to do better work. You haven't forgotten about that coffee you promised me, have you? Of course not. How about Saturday morning? I'll make the cornbread cake my mother taught me. On Saturday, Jason visited Mrs. Dorothy's house. It was a simple but cozy construction, with colorful walls and a small garden where she grew herbs. The lady welcomed him with the utmost affection, showing him every room of the house as if it were a palace. Dr. Jason, do you want to see my favorite part of the house? Of course, Mrs. Dorothy. She took him to the living room and pointed to a wall with several photos of her family. This is my gallery of heroes, she said. Here are my 5 children, all graduated and working. Here is my husband, who passed away 10 years ago. And here, she pointed to a photo of Jason cutting the ribbon at the complex's inauguration, is the man who made my dream come true. Jason felt his eyes fill with tears. Mrs. Dorothy, I'm the one who should thank you. You taught me that a home isn't just bricks and cement, it's love, it's family, it's dignity. That's right, my son, and you understood that from the very first day. They had coffee, ate cornbread cake, and Mrs. Dorothy told stories from her life. When Jason said goodbye, she hugged him tightly. Dr. Jason, can I give you some advice from an old lady? Of course, Mrs. Dorothy. Never forget why you started doing this. It's not for the fame, it's not for the money, it's for the people. As long as you remember that, you'll keep being a hero. In the months that followed, Jason became one of the most respected engineers in the country. His company grew, his team multiplied, and invitations to give lectures came from all over the United States. But he never forgot Mrs. Dorothy's words. In every new project, he remembered Emily and her broken bicycle. In every family that received the keys to a new home, he saw the face of Mrs. Margaret, his mother, who always believed in him. In every child playing in the playgrounds he designed, he remembered that small acts of kindness can change destinies. 2 years later, on the day of the inauguration of the 50th housing complex of the federal project, Jason was on stage alongside the minister, the governor, and several officials. But his eyes searched the crowd for the people who truly mattered, the families who would receive the homes. In the middle of the crowd, he saw a scene that moved him deeply. A young girl of about 10 years old, who looked very much like Emily, was riding her bicycle among the adults, laughing and playing. For a moment, Jason was transported back to that rainy April morning when a simple decision changed his life forever. After the event, while walking through the streets of the new housing complex, Jason found the girl with the bicycle sitting on the curb, crying. Her bicycle was on the ground, with the chain off. Without hesitation, Jason knelt beside her. "What happened, little one?" The girl looked up with eyes red from crying. "My bicycle broke, mister, and I really wanted to show my mother how well I learned to ride." Jason smiled and began to examine the bicycle. "What's your name?" "Lily Roberts." "Nice to meet you, Lily Roberts. I'm Jason. Let's see what we can do with this bicycle." While he worked, Jason noticed that other people were watching. Journalists, photographers, officials. But at that moment, none of that mattered. All that mattered was a girl who needed help. A few minutes later, the bicycle was working perfectly. "There," said Jason. "Now you can show your mother how well you ride." Lily got on the bicycle and took a few laps, beaming with happiness. "Thank you, Mr. Jason. You are so kind." One of the journalists approached. "Engineer Jason, may I ask a question?" "Of course." "You are considered one of the most important professionals in the country. Why did you stop to help an unknown child?" Jason looked at Lily, who was now happily pedaling alongside other children, and then answered, "Because it was by helping an unknown child that my life changed. And because some things are more important than any title or recognition, kindness is one of them." The journalist wrote down the answer, but Jason was already walking toward the car where Robert was waiting for him. "Still doing what you did that day," said Robert, smiling. "And I will keep doing it until the last day of my life. Emily is very proud of you, you know. She's 15 now, and whenever someone asks who her hero is, she says your name. She's the one who taught me to be a hero. Without her, I would just be another frustrated store clerk with his life." They got into the car and continued their journey. Along the way, Jason reflected on his journey. From a desperate young man running to an interview to the engineer responsible for giving homes to 50,000 American families, all because of a broken bicycle and a simple choice, to help someone in need. His phone rang. It was a message from Emily. "Hi, Mr. Jason. Daddy told me you helped another child today. You haven't changed a bit since that day, have you? Keep being that wonderful hero. With love, Emily." Jason smiled and replied, "Hi, Emily. Thank you for teaching me that true heroes don't wear capes. They just do what's right." A warm hug from your eternal bicycle fixer. 5 years later, Jason had already built housing for over 100,000 families across the United States. His company had become one of the most respected in the country, and he himself had received numerous national and international awards. But none of that compared to the joy he felt when visiting the housing complexes and seeing children playing on the playgrounds, families gathering in the yards, elderly people chatting in the squares. Every smile confirmed that he had chosen the right path. One April morning, exactly 7 years after the day that changed his life, Jason was driving through the streets of downtown New York City when he saw a familiar scene. A young delivery driver in uniform had stopped on the sidewalk to help an elderly lady who had fallen, with her groceries scattered on the ground. Jason parked his car and approached. "Do you need help?" he asked. The young delivery driver looked up. He must have been about 25 years old, with an honest face and simple clothes. "Thank you, sir, but everything's fine now. The lady just tripped, but she wasn't hurt." The elderly woman smiled. "This young man is an angel, doctor. He stopped his motorcycle to help me even though he was late for an important delivery." Jason looked at the young man with admiration. "What's your name?" "Michael Thompson, sir." "Michael, which company do you deliver for?" "Several, sir. I work through an app. I have to make at least 40 deliveries a day to pay my bills and help my mother." "And what are you studying?" "Civil engineering, sir. I study at night. I still have 2 years left to graduate." Jason smiled. The story was repeating itself. "Michael, do you have a few minutes to talk with me?" The young man hesitated. "Actually, sir, I'm a bit late." "It's about work. I'm an engineer and I need an intern." Michael's eyes lit up. "Really, sir?" Jason handed him his business card. Michael read it and turned pale. You are Jason Miller, the engineer who builds the affordable houses?" "That's me, and you remind me of someone I met a long time ago." Who, sir? Myself, 7 years ago. A young man who chose to help someone even when it might have hurt him. Michael still couldn't believe it. Are you offering me a job opportunity? I'm offering you an opportunity to change your life, if you want it, of course. I do, sir. Thank you so much. Then show up at my company on Monday at 8 in the morning. Sarah, my secretary, will be expecting you. Jason gave another card to the elderly lady. And if you need anything, ma'am, you can call me. Thank you, Doctor. You're very kind, just like Michael here. Jason returned to his car with a warm heart. The cycle continued. He had received an opportunity for helping Emily, and now he was offering an opportunity to Michael for the same reason. On Monday, Michael showed up at the construction company promptly at 8 in the morning. He was nervous but determined. Jason personally welcomed him and introduced him to the team. Everyone, this is Michael Thompson, our new intern. He'll be working with me on the new sustainable housing project. Over the following months, Michael proved to be an excellent professional. He was dedicated, creative, and most importantly, had the same social concern as Jason. During visits to the construction sites, he talked with families, played with children, and helped the elderly. One day, Jason called Michael for a private conversation. Michael, can I ask you a personal question? Of course, Mr. Jason. Why did you stop to help that lady the day we met? You were late. You needed to work. Michael thought for a moment. My grandmother always said that we should help others when they need it. She raised 6 children on her own, always helping the neighbors even when she had little. I learned from her that kindness costs nothing but is worth everything. Jason smiled. The answer was almost identical to the one he had given Robert years before. Your grandmother was a wise woman. Yes, she was. She passed away last year, but I always remember her teachings. And she would be proud of you today. 3 years later, Michael graduated as an engineer and was hired as a full engineer by the company. He had developed an innovative project for sustainable homes that reduced construction costs by 20%. On his graduation day, Jason attended the ceremony as a special guest. When Michael received his diploma, he dedicated the achievement to the man who gave me an opportunity when I needed it most. After the ceremony, they went to dinner at a simple downtown restaurant. Jason, said Michael, can I ask you a question? Of course. Why did you give me that opportunity? You didn't even know me. Jason looked out the restaurant window. On the sidewalk across the street, a little girl was riding her bicycle next to her father. Because someone gave me an opportunity when I needed it most, and because I learned that kindness multiplies when we share it. And who gave you that opportunity? An 8-year-old girl who needed to get to school and had her bicycle broken on a rainy morning. Michael smiled. That's a beautiful story. It's my story, and now it's part of yours too. 10 years after first meeting Emily, Jason was considered one of the most influential engineers in the United States. He had built housing for more than 200,000 families, created hundreds of jobs, and inspired a new generation of professionals committed to social responsibility. His company now had branches in 10 U.S. states, and his projects served as a model for countries in Latin America. But none of that had changed his essence. He still personally visited every construction site, talked with the families, and helped those in need. One Friday afternoon, Jason was in his office reviewing plans for the next year when Sarah appeared at the door. Jason, you have a visitor. Who is it? A young lady named Emily. She said you've known her since she was a child. Jason's heart raced. Emily was already 18. He hadn't seen her in person for over 2 years. Send her in. A few minutes later, a beautiful young woman with blonde hair and a radiant smile entered the office. It was Emily, now a grown woman. Hi, Mr. Jason. Jason stood up and greeted her with a warm hug. Emily, you've grown so much. How are you? Well, thank you. I finished high school last month and came to tell you some news. What news? I'm going to study civil engineering. And you know why? Jason smiled, imagining the answer. Why? Because I want to be like you. I want to build homes for families in need. I want to help people like you helped me that day. Jason felt his eyes fill with tears of emotion. "Emily, that's wonderful. You're going to be an amazing engineer. Daddy said I can intern at your company when I'm in my 3rd year. Will you accept me? It will be an honor to work with you." Emily walked over to the window overlooking the city. "Jason, can I ask you a question?" "Of course." "Do you regret stopping to help me that day?" Jason walked over to her and stood by her side, looking at the city view. "Emily, that was the best day of my life." "Why?" "Because it was the day I learned that our choices define who we are. I could have driven right by, arrived on time for the interview, maybe gotten some job, but I wouldn't be the person I am today." "And what kind of person are you today?" Jason thought for a moment. "Someone who knows that true happiness comes from helping others. Someone who understands that success isn't just measured by money or recognition, but by the number of lives we manage to touch positively." Emily smiled. "Daddy always says you're the happiest man he knows. Your father is right. And do you know why? Because every day I wake up knowing that my work makes a difference in people's lives. There's no better feeling than that." They talked for over an hour. Emily told him about her college plans, her professional dreams, her admiration for Jason's work. When she said goodbye, she left a gift, a framed photo of herself at 8 years old, next to her bicycle, with the dedication, "To the man who taught me that heroes really exist, with all my affection, Emily." Jason placed the photo on the shelf, next to other important mementos. Michael's first engineering diploma, a thank you letter from Mrs. Dorothy, a drawing made by a child from the first housing project he built. That evening, Jason had dinner with Mrs. Margaret, who was now 70 years old and still his biggest supporter. They lived in a comfortable house in the Greenwich Village neighborhood, the same one Jason had bought with his first paycheck from the construction company. "Son," said Mrs. Margaret while they had tea after dinner, "you know I'm the proudest mother in the world, right?" "Mom, you always exaggerate." "I'm not exaggerating at all. You achieved your dreams and still helped so many families achieve theirs. That's priceless. Everything good I learned, you taught me." "No, son, I only planted the seed. You made it grow and bear fruit." Mrs. Margaret got up and brought an old box from the kitchen. "I want to show you something." She opened the box, which was full of newspaper and magazine clippings. All the articles talked about Jason and his projects. "Mom, you kept all of this?" "I kept every article, every photo, every mention of your name. When I miss your father, I read these reports and know he would be as proud as I am." Jason hugged his mother, moved. "Thank you for always believing in me. And I'll keep believing until the last day of my life." The next morning, Saturday, Jason decided to do something he hadn't done in a long time, walk through the streets of the downtown area where it all began. He wanted to revisit the place where he had found Emily on that rainy April morning. Arriving at Broadway, he found the exact spot where he had stopped to help the girl. Now there was a clothing store there, but the memories were vivid in his mind. As he watched the movement of people, Jason noticed something curious. A middle-aged man had stopped to help a lady who was struggling to carry her groceries. Further ahead, a young woman was helping an elderly man cross the street. On the other side of the sidewalk, a boy was sharing his snack with a homeless person. Jason smiled. Maybe people had always been kind, and he had simply learned to see that kindness after that transformative morning. His phone rang. It was Michael. "Jason, can you come to the Dreamland Estates housing project? There's a surprise for you here." "What surprise?" "You need to see it in person. It's about Mrs. Dorothy." Jason became worried. Mrs. Dorothy was already 76 years old. "Is she okay?" "She's great. In fact, she's never been better. Can you come?" An hour later, Jason arrived at the Dreamland Estates housing project, the first one he had designed. The place had grown and developed a lot. Now it had a school, a health clinic, a bakery, a pharmacy, and even a small library. Michael was waiting for him at the entrance, smiling mysteriously. "What's going on here?" asked Jason. "You'll see." They walked through the streets of the housing project until they reached the small central square. There was a crowd gathered, all people Jason knew, residents of the various housing complexes he had built, employees of his company, local authorities. In the center of the square, there was something covered by a tarp. Mrs. Dorothy approached Jason, leaning on a cane but with a radiant face. "Dr. Jason, the time has come to give back a little for everything you've done for us." "Mrs. Dorothy, what is all this?" "It's a tribute, my son, a tribute from all the families you helped achieve the dream of home ownership." Michael gave a signal, and several people pulled off the tarp. Underneath was a bronze statue of Jason kneeling next to a bicycle with a little girl beside him. On the base of the statue was written, "In honor of engineer Jason Miller, who taught us that true greatness lies in the small gestures of kindness." Jason was in shock. There were hundreds of people applauding, many crying with emotion, children he had seen born, now grown up, elderly people he had visited during illnesses, entire families that had prospered after receiving their homes. "I can't accept this," said Jason, moved. "I just did my job." "No, doctor," said Mrs. Dorothy, holding his hand. "You did much more than your job. You changed our lives, and we wanted future generations to know that there are people like you." A child of about 6 years old approached and handed a drawing to Jason. It was the image of a man fixing a bicycle with a giant heart drawn next to it. "That's you, Uncle Jason," said the child. "My mother said you are a real hero." Jason knelt down to the child's height. "And you, what do you think makes someone a hero?" The child thought for a moment. "Helping others when they need it." "That's right. And you can be a hero too." "How?" "By being kind to everyone, helping those in need, and always doing the right thing." The child smiled and ran off to play with other children. During the ceremony, several people spoke about how Jason had impacted their lives. Mothers who now saw their children growing up in decent homes, elderly people who had found peace in their homes, young people who were inspired by his example to also help others. When it was Jason's turn to speak, he became emotional. "Friends, you are honoring me, but in truth, the ones who should be honored are you. You taught me the true meaning of the word home. You showed me that a house only becomes a home when it is filled with love, dreams, and hope." He looked at the statue and continued, "This statue represents a moment that changed my life forever. The moment I learned that our choices define who we are. That we can choose to be indifferent to the problems of others, or we can choose to make a difference. And I choose every day to make a difference. Not because I am special, but because I believe that we all have the power to be heroes in someone's life." The crowd applauded emotionally. After the ceremony, Jason was greeted by hundreds of people. Each handshake, each hug, each word of thanks was confirmation that he had chosen the right path in life. At the end of the day, when everyone had dispersed, Jason stood alone in the square, looking at the statue. Michael approached. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking that that rainy April morning was the beginning of all this. Do you regret anything?" Jason smiled. "I regret only one thing." "What?" "That it took me so long to realize that true happiness lies in serving others." They walked together toward Jason's car. Along the way, they passed several houses where families were gathered in the backyards. Children played in the streets. Elderly people chatted on the porches. "Jason," said Michael, "can I ask a question?" "Of course. If you could go back in time and change something about that day, would you?" Jason stopped walking and looked around. He saw happy families in their homes, children playing safely in the streets, a prosperous and united community. "I wouldn't change a single thing," he replied. "Every second of that day was perfect. Even the rain, even the delay, even the desperation I felt. Everything was necessary to bring me here. And if Emily hadn't had trouble with her bicycle, then maybe I would have gotten that job at the first company that called me. Maybe I'd be building commercial buildings, making good money, but without the purpose I have today." "Do you believe in destiny?" Jason thought for a moment. "I believe destiny puts choices before us, and that our choices shape our destiny. Emily wasn't a coincidence in my life. She was an opportunity to choose who I wanted to be." When they reached the car, Jason looked back one more time. The statue glowed under the light of the plaza's lampposts, and around it, the houses lit up as night fell. 15 years after that life-changing meeting with Emily, Jason had become much more than a successful engineer. He had become a symbol of hope for thousands of American families. His company now built housing in 12 countries across Latin America, always maintaining the same principle: decent homes for low-income families. He had received international awards, honorary degrees from universities, and even a nomination for the Nobel Peace Prize. But none of that was as important as the letter he received one Tuesday morning. It was from Lily Roberts, the girl whose bicycle he had fixed during the inauguration of a housing project 5 years earlier. "Dear Dr. Jason, remember me. I'm Lily Roberts, the girl with the broken bicycle. Today I'm 15 years old, and I'm writing a school paper about heroes. I chose to write about you. Not because you're famous, but because you taught me that being a hero is simple. It's stopping to help when someone needs it. I hope to be like you one day. Sincerely, Lily Roberts." Jason kept the letter in the special drawer where he stored all the correspondence that moved him the most. There were hundreds of them, letters from children, from mothers, from elderly people, from young people inspired by his story. That afternoon, he went to visit the company's newest project, a set of sustainable homes on the outskirts of Miami. It was the first project fully managed by Emily, who had graduated as a civil engineer the previous year and chosen to work at Jason's company. When he arrived at the construction site, he found Emily supervising the installation of solar panels on one of the houses. She wore a helmet, a safety vest, and directed the team with the same passion Jason had shown in his early projects. "How's the work going?" asked Jason. "Better than we expected," replied Emily, beaming. "The houses will be delivered a month ahead of schedule, and we're managing to generate enough energy to make the whole community sustainable. I'm proud of you. I learned from the best teacher." They walked through the site and Emily showed him the innovations she had implemented. Rainwater collection systems, community gardens, common areas planned to strengthen community bonds. "Emily," said Jason, "can I ask you a question?" "Of course." "Why did you choose to follow this path? You could work at any company, make a lot more money." Emily stopped walking and looked at Jason seriously. "Remember what you told me when I was a child? That some things are more important than money?" "I remember." "Well then, I found out you were right. The feeling of handing over the keys to a house to a family that never had anything is priceless. It's better than any high salary." At that moment, one of the future residents approached. She was a woman around 40 years old, accompanied by 3 small children. "Dr. Emily," the woman said, "may I see how my house is coming along?" "Of course, Mrs. Gladys, come with me." Emily accompanied the family to one of the houses in the final stages of construction. Jason followed them from a distance, observing the interaction. "Is this going to be my kitchen?" asked one of the boys, about 6 years old. "That's right," replied Emily. "And look, there's a window right here so your mother can watch you playing in the backyard while she cooks." "And where will my room be?" asked a slightly older girl. "Come with me and I'll show you." Emily took the family to see every room in the house. With each space, Mrs. Gladys's eyes filled with tears of joy. "Dr. Emily," she said at the end of the tour, "how can I ever thank you?" "You don't need to thank me at all, Mrs. Gladys. It's your right to have a decent home. But even so, you're making my biggest dream come true." Jason approached the group. "Mrs. Gladys, may I ask you a question?" "Of course, Doctor. What will you do first when you get the keys?" Mrs. Gladys smiled, wiping away her tears. "I'll gather my children in the living room and say a prayer of thanks. Then I'll make the most delicious lunch of my life in my brand new kitchen. And then I'll sit on the porch and watch my children playing in our backyard." "In our backyard, Doctor. For the first time in their lives, they'll have a place of their own to play." Jason smiled, moved. Even after all these years, stories like Mrs. Gladys's still touched him deeply. When the family said goodbye, Emily and Jason continued walking through the construction site. "You know what makes me most proud of you," said Jason. "What?" "That you understood our work isn't just construction. It's building dreams, dignity, hope. You taught me that." "Actually, it was an 8-year-old girl who taught me, and now that girl is teaching other families." Emily smiled. "Sometimes I think about that day. If my bicycle hadn't broken down..." "Think what?" "I think maybe you would have gotten that first job at any ordinary construction company, and never specialized in affordable housing. Probably. And I never would have met a real hero. Emily, you know I'm not a hero, right? I'm just someone who learned to make the right choices. To me, that's the definition of a hero. That evening, Jason had dinner with Mrs. Margaret, who now needed special care due to her age, but kept a lucid mind and a heart full of love. "Mom," said Jason, "you know you raised the happiest man in the world, right? I just taught what my mother taught me, that we should always do good, no matter who it's for. Do you have any regrets in life?" Mrs. Margaret thought for a moment. "Just one. Not having met your father sooner to have more children like you." Jason laughed and hugged his mother. "You gave me everything I needed, love, education, and most of all, values. And you multiplied all of that for thousands of people." In the middle of that night, Jason couldn't sleep. He went out to the porch of his house and stood looking at the stars. He thought about his entire journey, from that desperate young man running to an interview to the fulfilled man he was today. He remembered all the people who had crossed his path: Emily, Robert, Mrs. Dorothy, Michael, Lily, Mrs. Gladys, and hundreds of others. Each one had contributed to shaping the man he had become. His phone rang. It was a message from Emily. "Jason, I just got a call. A family from the Hope Village housing project is in trouble. Their youngest son is in the hospital, and they don't have money for transportation. Can we help?" Jason didn't hesitate to reply, "Of course. I'll pick you up in 10 minutes. He dressed quickly and left the house. Once again, someone needed help, and he wouldn't hesitate to offer it. On his way to pick up Emily, Jason smiled as he realized that even after all these years, his first reaction upon learning that someone needed help was still the same: to help without questioning, without hesitating. That rainy April morning had planted a seed that kept growing and bearing fruit, and it would continue to do so throughout his life. End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this touching story. Do you believe small acts of kindness can truly change destinies? Share your experiences in the comments. We love reading your stories. And don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming narratives.